The sun had barely peaked above the horizon when Daniel Carter wiped the sweat from his brow and stepped back from the half-finished wooden cabinet. His cramped workshop, built beside the tiny house he and his daughter Lily called home, smelled of pine, varnish, and honest labor. A weak shaft of morning light poured through the single dusty window, catching on the swirling dust motes in the air. The world outside was quiet, save for the occasional call of a gull or the bark of a distant dog. He ran a calloused hand over the smooth edge of the drawer he'd just sanded. It was nearly perfect, his best work in weeks, even if no one but the customer would ever know it. He stood in his old jeans and worn flannel shirt, hair disheveled from sleep and sawdust, and allowed himself a single, satisfied exhale. This was how he found peace, not in noise or wealth, but in wood that bent to his will and stayed solid when he was done. "Daddy!" A small voice rang out from the yard. Daniel looked up and smiled. There was Lily, his 7-year-old whirlwind of joy, her curly hair bouncing as she skipped barefoot across the dry grass. She was dragging her battered pink backpack, wearing a bright pink sun hat several sizes too big, and a t-shirt with a unicorn on it. The hat flopped over her eyes as she trotted toward him. "Can we go to the beach today?" she asked, breathless. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I thought you wanted to go to the library today." "I did, but now I want to find seashells," she declared, throwing her arms wide like it was the most obvious thing in the world. He couldn't help but laugh. "You little rascal," she grinned, showing the gap where her front tooth used to be. "Please, just for a little while. Please?" Daniel leaned on the work table, considering. His arms were tired. His back ached. He still had another chair to finish before Sunday, and the glue on the cabinet hadn't dried yet, but he looked down into Lily's hopeful brown eyes, and the choice was already made. "All right," he said, "but just for a little while. No getting wet, and we'll be back before lunch." "Yay!" she squealed and ran off to grab her shoes, already forgetting her backpack in her excitement. An hour later, they were rattling down the coast in his old green pickup, the windows rolled down, warm wind whipping through the cab. Lily sang to herself in the passenger seat, kicking her legs and pointing at horses or birds or anything remotely interesting. Daniel just smiled and nodded. She was the music in his otherwise quiet life. They pulled into a dirt turnout just off the main road. The beach near Hollows Point wasn't a tourist beach. No ice cream stands, no rental umbrellas, just jagged cliffs, pale sand, and the ceaseless crash of waves. That made it perfect. Lily jumped down from the truck and took off down the narrow path between the rocks. Daniel followed slowly, enjoying the cool ocean breeze and the smell of salt and seaweed. He watched her run ahead, holding her sun hat with one hand, calling out about every new shell or strange piece of driftwood she discovered. Then she stopped. "Daddy!" she yelled, turning to him and pointing. "Look!" Daniel squinted out toward the ocean. At first he thought it was just a cloud, but then he saw the smoke, a long dark column twisting up from the sea about a mile out. It didn't look like an engine exhaust. It looked like fire. His gut twisted. He shaded his eyes and saw it more clearly now. A ship, a big one, listing to one side. He could make out faint details through the smoke, levels of balconies, flashing lights, and the faint sound of sirens. "A cruise ship! Stay here," he said instantly, voice sharp with urgency. "But what is it?" Lily asked, alarmed. "Just stay by the truck." He was already turning back, grabbing his phone, checking for a signal. No bars. "Damn!" He turned back to her, dropping to one knee. "Lily, listen to me. Get in the truck, lock the doors, don't open them for anyone. You understand me?" She stared at him, fear creeping into her eyes. "Where are you going?" "There's a boat at the harbor. I can help them. But, Daddy, I'll be okay. You just stay put. I promise I'll come back. I always do." He kissed her forehead, then turned and ran. His boots slammed against the rocks, lungs burning as he made for the harbor, a half-mile sprint away. He didn't stop to think. didn't weigh the risks. He just moved. The harbor was nearly empty, but there was one boat, his buddy's skiff, the one they used for fishing on weekends. He'd helped fix the motor last month. He hoped to God it still ran. It did. Within minutes, Daniel was speeding toward the ship, cutting through the waves. His hands gripped the tiller so hard, his knuckles went white. The smoke was thicker now. The closer he got, the more he saw the chaos. Lifeboats dropping, people screaming, debris in the water. And still, no Coast Guard. Then he saw her. A woman, in a shredded white dress, floating alone on a piece of debris, her head lolling forward, dark hair clinging to her face. Waves slammed into her, threatening to drag her under. He didn't think. He killed the engine, yanked off his shirt, and dove. The cold water slammed into him like a brick wall, but he pushed through, kicking hard. The distance to her felt endless, but he reached her. She was barely conscious, her lips blue, her skin clammy. "Hang on!" he gasped, grabbing her under the arms. She made no sound, but her eyes fluttered weakly. He hauled her back toward the boat, kicking with everything he had. It took all his strength to lift her into the skiff. She coughed, gagging on seawater, but she was alive. He collapsed beside her, gasping. "You're okay," he whispered. Her hand touched his wrist weakly. "You came back," she murmured. "I couldn't leave you." Her lips trembled. Who are you?" He looked at her, wet hair, bleeding forehead, trembling lips. She didn't look like someone rich or powerful. She looked like someone clinging to life by a thread. "No one," he said. "Just a guy trying to do the right thing." They lay there until the distant thwack-thwack of helicopters broke through the smoke. Help was finally coming. 3 days later, Daniel sat in a stiff chair beside the hospital bed. The woman was awake now, her head bandaged, her arm in a sling. She looked at him often, like she didn't quite know what to say. Lily sat at the foot of the bed, coloring with borrowed crayons. Occasionally, she glanced up and smiled shyly at the woman, who smiled back. "I still don't know how to thank you," the woman said finally, her voice quiet. "You don't have to," Daniel replied. "You saved my life. I just did what I could." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the hospital blanket. "Most people wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have risked their lives for a stranger." Daniel shrugged. "Most people haven't had a daughter watch them leave and promise to come back. I couldn't break that promise." She looked at him with something close to awe. Then she said, almost reluctantly, "My name's Eve. Eve Valencia." Daniel blinked. He knew that name. Everyone knew that name. "You're that Valencia?" he asked, trying to reconcile this woman with the billionaire mogul behind the largest cruise line on the West Coast. She gave a tired, embarrassed smile. "I didn't want to say anything, not right away. I didn't want you to think I owed you money, or that I expected anything." He laughed softly. "You think I saved you because you're rich?" "No," she said. "That's why it means so much." "I don't care who you are," Daniel said. "You were in the water. You needed help. That's all that mattered." Eve blinked quickly, eyes shimmering. He stood to leave. "Get better, all right? My daughter's starting to like you." "I want to see you again," she said suddenly. Daniel froze in the doorway. He turned slowly. "Why?" he asked. "Because I've never met anyone like you, and I think I don't want to lose the one real thing that's come out of all this." 2 weeks later, Daniel was back at work in the diner. Nothing had changed. Grease still stained his apron, and the fryers still hissed at him like angry snakes. No reporters came knocking, no cameras. Then, one night, a black car pulled into the alley behind the diner. A man in a suit stepped out. "Mr. Carter." Daniel eyed him warily. "Yeah? I work for Miss Valencia. She'd like to see you." "She okay?" "She's better than okay. She's building something, and she needs you." The house sat on the cliffs just north of where he'd found her. Sleek, clean lines, ocean views. Ocean. She stood waiting on the porch in jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like a billionaire. "Why me?" he asked as they sat with coffee, the sun melting into the waves. "Because you didn't want anything from me," she said. "You didn't ask who I was. You just cared." He sipped the coffee. "I'm not a builder of empires. No, but you build homes, with your hands, with your heart. I want to rebuild too, not ships or money, but something good, something honest." She reached out, touched his hand. "I want you to help me build it." 6 months later, Lily chased a golden retriever puppy across the yard of their new house. Daniel stood on the porch, arms folded, watching the sun fall into the sea. Beside him stood Eve, barefoot, calm, smiling. "You ever think about that day?" she asked. "Every day." She looked at him. "That was the worst moment of my life, and the best thing that ever happened to me." Daniel looked at her. "Same." She reached for his hand. He took it. They stood together, 2 lives changed forever, by water, by courage, and by a single selfless choice.